Hello and welcome to today's special webinar event, Accelerate Your Cloud Native Initiatives While Spending Less Time on Infrastructure. Today's webinar is sponsored by Marantis and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, there are a few things that you should know about this webinar. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. The first one that I really want to call your attention to is the Cloud Native Data Center white paper that comes from Marantis. It's a great resource, and I'd really recommend checking it out. You can also find a link to the Actual Tech Media Guerrilla Guide book club, where you can get access to our great printed resources on technology topics. And there's also a link to the ATM Event Center, where you can find more events like this one. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and your colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding one $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky attendee on the live event. Of course, you must be in attendance during the event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section as well. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. To help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. At the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get on to today's fantastic content. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter today, Mike Ward, Director of Product Marketing for Cloud Infrastructure at Marantis. And with that, Mike, I'm going to turn things over to you. The floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Scott. It's good to be with everyone today. I appreciate you taking your time out to share part of your precious day with us here today. We'd like to spend a bit of time today talking about how you can accelerate your cloud native initiatives while spending less time on your infrastructure. And first thing I wanted to do is sort of set the stage with a number of technology challenges that we see and we hear from customers that impact their ability to deliver their business applications in a efficient and rapid manner. First and foremost, one of the key challenges that we see is the challenge of having sufficient level of visibility and control into the hybrid cloud, particularly when running applications across one or more or multiple, in the case of a hybrid cloud providers, and having appropriate visibility to really understand what's happening in those environments, and when problems arise, knowing where those problems are and how to resolve them in a timely manner. This dovetails into the challenge of operational complexity is driving overhead. Cloud native environments are increasingly complex. They consist of many different parts, applications being separated and running across a distributed environment across multiple providers, multiple processing platforms. And this fundamentally has been driving the need for additional staff to manage this increasingly complex environment. Now, another challenge we see with customers that are saying, okay, I'm going to avoid some of that challenge by just sticking with a single provider. Well, this creates challenges of its own in that of risk, creating a single point of risk and how you're going to manage risk mitigation and disaster recovery planning should something happen with that one particular provider and you have the proverbial all your eggs in one basket. Challenges around how you support an effective open source strategy arise. How can you make open source a core part of your business strategy to be able to move quickly and efficiently into deploying your applications? And then finally, that of just application modernization and migration to the public cloud. You have a legacy of business applications built around virtual environments, and you wish to move those into a cloud native environment. But that transition path is oftentimes challenging to take those legacy applications and break them down into smaller microservices based architectures and deploy that. So that also creates a significant challenge that requires a lot of unique skills. So today we're going to talk about kind of the ways these challenges sort of come together and how they manifest themselves into a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environment, and how we can go about helping address those going forward. But first, let's take sort of a step back. Let's talk about the concept of a data center. Maybe a bit oversimplistic, but what is a data center? Historically, we thought about a data center as a building that houses computer systems, right? Racks and racks of servers and storage and networking components connecting all of that together. But if we think about it a bit more abstractly, it's really is a virtual somewhere that we store data and that we perform our computation. And does it need to be a physical building in one place, that in particular one that we physically control? And we would say no. The concept of the data center has been and is continuing to rapidly evolve. We're no longer bound to a physical building. We've moved applications into the cloud, but yet we still have those physical building data centers. Both the cloud itself is held in their data centers, but we oftentimes still have our own private data centers as well. And when we think about that, we want to find a way to make sure we maximize our investment on our historic physical plant, our physical private data centers, but then also take advantage of what we can in the cloud-based data center. The concept of edge computing is sort of driving a new way of thinking about applications, and therefore driving how we think about the usage of data centers and where we use our applications on what data centers. And all of this really combines to driving the fact that the concept of hybrid cloud, the combination of your private local data centers and the usage of public cloud, one or more public cloud offerings, to combine this concept of hybrid cloud is a rapidly growing solution. Now, why does hybrid cloud matter? Probably first and foremost is it provides you with leverage. It gives you leverage from a pricing and a business perspective with suppliers, as opposed to working with just a single public cloud provider. If in this scenario where you're only working with one provider and your applications are written directly to their APIs, to their interfaces, it makes it very hard for you to move to other offerings where you may be able to get better pricing. So having a hybrid cloud strategy where you from the get-go built your applications to be able to move across infrastructures puts the leverage and control back into your hands. It provides the benefit of efficiency. Efficiency can be defined in multiple ways, but we can think about it from a resource consumption efficiency, where you can pick and choose where certain elements of your applications are being hosted and run based on pricing or available resources or other attributes that may be important to you. And I think the concept of available resources is particularly important, and maybe in this current day and time with supply chain constraints and the challenges of actually procuring compute technology, storage and networking connectivity, with the lead times involved oftentimes in procuring this equipment. The ability to rapidly scale up your business in your private data center may not be possible just from the ability to purchase that gear. So having the ability to place your workloads into data centers and providers where they have capacity is very important. Hybrid cloud also provides the benefit of risk mitigation. The ability to spread your processing and your data across multiple providers. Not only can it provide you that economic benefit we talked about, but it also provides you a risk mitigation benefit. Should one provider have a major outage that brings their network down or their offerings down for a period of time, you're able to just reconfigure and redeploy portions of your application into other providers and make sure you have a continuity of operation for your business. Hybrid cloud brings the benefit of location. We'll talk much more about this in some following slides, but it provides you the ability to run your workloads where you need to and when you need to. And this can really, maybe open up new markets for you. Perhaps you have not been previously able to serve certain customers or certain markets because of proximity issues, and this dovetails into our last item of regulation, maybe business issues. By having the ability to place your compute, storage, and connectivity across different areas where they may be needed, you can really now take advantage of placing your solution perhaps closer to your customer, lower latency, better performance, and give you a benefit in that respect. And then, as we said, dovetailing into the regulation aspect, when we think about regulatory issues such as GDPR, where requiring user data to be hosted such as in Germany, user data to be hosted in the country where the user resides, you now have the ability to place that part of your infrastructure there where those users are, but still manage other aspects elsewhere where it makes sense across the broader hybrid cloud offering. Now, how does cloud native fit into all of this? We think about cloud native in the concept of applications which have been devolved into a collection of microservices or mini applications, mini services that are integrated and working together as a whole. And the beauty of this architecture is these microservices or these smaller applications working together as a whole do not have to all reside on the same compute platform in the same location. You can even spread these services across multiple cloud providers or your private infrastructure, taking advantage of perhaps certain elements, certain types of compute platforms or storage offerings that are best tailored or tuned for the needs of your particular application. Application mobility has really become a key driver to leveraging choice, and cloud native fits perfectly into this concept. Again, the ability to deploy and move aspects of your application, your broader application, where they're needed at the time that they may be needed. And also the concept here of placing the application closer to the end user is critical. This really is the core concept of workloads being hosted where they're needed, when they're needed, just not just where the data centers happen to be. Kubernetes and containers fundamentally make this happen. Really, they're becoming the de facto standard if they have not become the de facto standard for cloud native. By packaging your application using containers that allow you to easily move these across various compute locations, and using the power of Kubernetes as the orchestrator to manage all of this, it really enables the platform now that you can interconnect and run these microservices as a broader application level and move those around. And open source, which is the sort of the foundation of Kubernetes and many other components that enable this infrastructure, open source really has fundamentally enabled the speed to which we're able to not only build these applications, but also deploy and manage these applications. So talking a bit more about open source in the cloud, really, I would argue that the cloud as we know it today would never exist would it not be for the concept of open source. And it plays such a critical role today and will continue to in the future. If we look at open source, almost 80% of businesses utilize open source in some fashion, and many of them don't even know that they're doing it at times. It may be that their licensed commercial software has open source components underneath the covers, or in many cases, their developers may be using and taking advantage of open source components and perhaps just never have told anyone within their organization. But really, open source is created an environment to which developers can build at a much more rapid pace than ever before. They can focus on the value add they need to bring to their business applications and build the unique applications and services, and not have to worry about reinventing the wheel of just the sort of the, what I like to call the plumbing, the core interconnectivity and the core building blocks of applications that are needed. Those have been done, those have been solved. There's no real differentiation to be done there or gained for a business. So take advantage of those components that are already in place and those problems that are solved, and apply your precious development resources on new areas that you need. Now, this brings in the concept that open source oftentimes can be a bit selfish, in the sense that when people are working on an open source project, they're looking to get what they need out of it. Maybe the concept of scratching their own itch, and they're focused on their problems and building that. But the net benefit is, as that product matures, or as that open source project, I should say, matures, everyone benefits from that. That now is something that's a new piece of work that the broader community can benefit from and build on top of and continue to expand. But we should also recognize that open source does come with its own set of challenges around security, how it's supported, and just the skills to put all these things together. If we look at the number of open source projects that are floating around out in the ecosystem, it's just can be overwhelming. So how do I know which projects to use? How do I know that the version I'm deploying is the current in the latest version and doesn't have some huge security vulnerabilities in it and things of that nature? These are issues that sort of drive additional resources. So, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And while you're taking advantage of open source to help accelerate your development timeline, it does oftentimes bring in the need to bring additional specialized skills in that can help you manage those challenges within your infrastructure. Now, as we look at the vision of the future, I think we have to look towards the future to decide how we solve the problems of today. And as we look at this open source, hybrid, or multi-cloud future, really there's sort of four key tenets that we place into in our vision going forward. And the first of that is the concept of compute everywhere. We want to be able to enable workloads to be run where they're needed, whether that from the core to the edge or even into your hand. If we think about the environments and how the compute landscape has evolved today, we hold a very powerful computer in our hand or our pocket almost 24 hours a day, or certainly during our waking hours. And why can we not take advantage of that processing power to handle some of our broader disparate compute loads? This also ties in the concept of portable workloads. We need a solution that really allows workloads to be truly portable. And here I'm talking about portability, not just from the concept of moving it from one cloud provider to another, but ultimately to where those workloads are abstracted well enough that they can be moved across physical processing platforms, from a large high-end server in the data center, again, down to your mobile device, or to a small Raspberry Pi processing element that might be sitting in an embedded element out on the edge. So we really want to be able to take advantage of all this compute power wherever it might be and make our workloads portable there. We also want to drive the aspect of proximity. How do we push our workloads closer to where they're needed? And how do we enable our workloads and our applications to have a view and understanding of their requirements on latency, understanding of the resource availability within your infrastructure, as well as attributes that may be relevant to the customer needs? And how can we let those applications start to make their own decisions of where they need to run to meet those requirements? And then finally, we see a vision of the future that's highly driven around that of open ecosystems, where we have open standards that create interfaces that allow these resources and these applications to be easily deployed, easily developed, and rolled out because of these standard APIs and interfaces that are provided through an open ecosystem. So talking a bit more about the need for portability, the concept of portability is really now being made possible just because of the level of connectivity bandwidth that we're finally continuing to have increasingly available to us. 5G and always on connectivity and edge computing really are creating the foundation to where it is now possible to push more and more of this compute out directly, in hand or much more in close proximity to the consumer. We also have the concept of just-in-time or on-demand computing, the ability to ramp up and down our compute resources based on what's needed. We've long thought about the concepts of Cyber Monday and the ability to bring additional services online for those applications, but now really we can dial that down to a micro level, and for microburst processing needs for applications, be able to bring resources up and down to address that. Now, another area that really plays into all of this is the concept of green technology and resource conservation. If we look at the amount of power and energy and water and other resources that our data centers are consuming today, it can be just overwhelming and amazing how much that is really how much of our precious resources our technology is requiring. So the ability to move applications to areas where perhaps power is less expensive or more readily available, where there's availability of renewable energy power. These are all things that can be important to users and customers on where and how their applications run. So the ability to move our applications to those spaces, and then also ramp them up and down, as we said earlier, be able to deploy them when needed, and then turn them off when they're not needed or important. And again, Kubernetes and containers are really sort of enabling all of this by enabling that portability that we can help drive. Now, proximity is similar to portability in some aspects, but when we think about proximity, why does this matter? Why does it matter that an application is running as close to me as possible to where I'm consuming the compute aspect? First and foremost is perhaps the issue of latency. And the ability to minimize the time between the interaction and the compute. And a lot of times people say, well, it's good enough, or it's worked for me fine. Well, there's also this aspect of perception. If your interaction with an application or a console interface or a web interface, if it has that slightly faster feel, that has a positive impact on the perception of customers to your product or service. But there's also issues where it may matter a bit more. Perhaps a less important, but important to some aspect would be that around, let's take gaming and the issues of latency and performance of gaming to users. Now, perhaps not world ending there, but if we abstract or take that concept and push it a bit further and start talking or thinking about telemedicine and issues of maybe virtual surgeries where the surgeon is located halfway across the world, connected over the internet through a cloud native application, controlling a robot that's actually doing the surgery. I'd argue to say there latency matters, as does reliability, throughput, and performance. So if we can push some of that application or the critical parts of the control side of that application closer to that surgery robot, I think I would certainly feel better laying on that operating table, knowing that there's less likelihood for a glitch in the system during the processing. Proximity also matters from resources. The ability to place your applications where there's the availability of the compute power that you need. Perhaps you have a application that has heavy requirements on GPU type compute resources, and maybe one provider has an affinity or a special set of GPUs that you particularly need to use for your application. The ability to push your application there when you need be is important. And then we've talked earlier about issues of localization regarding regulatory issues, but it also plays into that of identity and security. The closer, there'll be certain applications where you still want to keep those under your physical lock and key and not out at some cloud provider data center. So the ability to provide a higher level of security to your data may be important for you, that they fit inside your own private data center, but yet other portions of that application could run outside. And then finally, the issue of scarcity. I mentioned this earlier too, just in this day and time of the supply chain challenges and lead times on IT equipment, having the ability to place it where the resources are actually available is always important. So what is our approach with Marantis on how to address and solve these issues to help you deploy your applications more readily? First, we'll sort of look at a set of architectural requirements. First and foremost, we believe applications need to be infrastructure agnostic. That is, they need to be able to be run regardless of your choice of cloud, private, hosted infrastructure. There needs to be the concept of a centralized resource directory where you can see all the resources and all the compute platforms available to you to deploy your applications, and see that from a single pane of glass and a single monitoring application. The infrastructure must support both virtualization and container management. As I mentioned earlier on, we recognize there are a lot of legacy applications that just may not make sense to move over to a cloud native environment, and will stay in a virtualization based platform for many years to come as they play out their natural life cycle. So it's important that there's the ability from a common platform to deliver both these virtualization services and container management, and see them from a single management interface in a single tool chain. There needs to be a common API to access these infrastructure resources. And we believe these should be open source based and enabled. Need to be able to take advantage of all the benefits of the new technologies and new applications, new services that are being made available through the open source community, and have those integrated into this environment. And then also benefit from that, from the sort of the collective good, if you will, that comes from a broader community working to push these platforms forward. The platform must enable self-service so that your infrastructure team can deploy and manage the platform itself, and likewise, it must also be capable of being fully operated or fully managed. So if you wish not to do that, if you wish to place those resources more critically on your own application development, that you can have someone manage that infrastructure for you, as utility, as a service. So when we look at how to go about solving this problem from the Marantis side, we took existing offerings that we had from our Marantis OpenStack offering, and our various container Kubernetes offerings, and we placed on top of that a multi-cloud thin layer, fundamentally with the goal to abstract the nuances of the individual public cloud providers or the private cloud infrastructures or bare metal or hosted bare metal platforms, to abstract the nuances of those from your applications, so that your workloads, your applications really fundamentally don't have to worry about that. They write to a common set of interfaces and then can readily move across and be deployed across the right infrastructure at the right time for you. And we call this offering Mirantis Flow. Again, this is a collection of existing Marantis products and services and technologies that we have put together through an integrated offering called Mirantis Flow that fundamentally is intended to unleash your developers and architectures from the infrastructure management. With Mirantis Flow, we have integrated everything through our Marantis Container Cloud offering to address 5 key aspects. First, we work to provide self-service virtualization in your data center. Again, this is done with our Marantis OpenStack for Kubernetes offering to allow you to take advantage of all your legacy virtualization-based applications and continue those forward. But then transition or add to that the container-based microservices cloud native world using Kubernetes as a service with our container-based offerings, and giving you the option to take advantage of both. And we see a lot of users and customers that are looking to kind of start that migration from the virtualization world into cloud native. And this gives them the ability to sort of make that transition versus having to start over with a whole new set of tools and offerings. Mirantis Flow provides and delivers upon key built-in monitoring, logging, and alerting. So you have the necessary visibility into your infrastructure and what's happening there, regardless of what physical infrastructure it may be running on. We provide deployment and onboarding services to help you very quickly get up to speed. And then finally, we offer 24/7, 365 proactive operations and support for the infrastructure. So looking at this sort of visually, we bring together, as I said, the virtualization and the container worlds together to really integrate those through our Marantis Container Cloud orchestration mechanism. Really giving you the best of both worlds, the ability to deliver on a wide variety of use cases, things that may have been more traditionally virtualization centric, some of the more telco type workloads, things 5G and edge, but also the legacy workloads, but then also address your cloud native applications, things driving into Internet of Things or other areas in that aspect. And we couple with this the ability to visualize what's happening within your infrastructure through tools like Stacklight and Lens. And then we also layer on top of this a level of security with our Marantis Secure Registry offering and Marantis Container Runtime products that really Marantis Secure Registry giving you the ability to not only scan container images for known security problems, but also to sort of manage your overall CI/CD workflows and control and manage promotion of images out into your production environments. And then and most importantly, then enabling all of this across your choice of physical platform, from public cloud, private cloud, or bare metal. So why Mirantis Flow? First, it creates a paradigm shift, placing the power of choice into your hands. You can then now choose. You can now choose the cloud infrastructure that you wish to run on, or what combination of those that you wish. We liberate your staff by allowing you to focus your precious IT resources on creating business value for your company, developing the applications and things there versus just doing the day-to-day management of the infrastructure and orchestration. We deliver both the virtualization and containerization, one platform for all of your core infrastructure needs, both for your more legacy applications as well as your next generation environments. And then we empower open source by building ourselves upon open source offerings such as Kubernetes and others, but then enabling that in a platform that you can then integrate other applications as well. And then finally, what are the sort of the guarantees that we provide with Mirantis Flow? And I think this is a very important aspect of the offering, in that we do stand behind these kind of core tenets and guarantees to you. First is that of rapid deployment. We guarantee that we can have you deployed within 48 hours of hardware being verified, which will decrease the time to value of you leveraging your existing investments. We can reduce your overhead. With the automated and integrated lifecycle management, we are able to help reduce your overall operations overhead by managing that infrastructure for you, placing your team, allowing your teams to go work on business differentiating applications. We can assist with the workload onboarding. We have the talent and skills within Marantis that have done this many times and helped many customers through this path. And we're really able to help you kickstart your projects to migrate existing workloads over into a Mirantis Flow offering-based environment over into a cloud native world. And we do this we guarantee by providing a complete solution that delivers both the virtualization support as well as container, all within the same infrastructure. Now, we deliver this through a choice of support side offerings called OpsCare or OpsCare Plus. And these are fundamentally meant to allow you to choose the right level of assistance from Marantis for your particular needs. We provide both of these include proactive support that include monitoring, logging, and reporting as a service, available 24/7, 365 with SLEs. And we, through this, will provide deployment and validation of your environment. The ops care model is one where you still actually do the day-to-day management of your infrastructure, but we're there as think of us as your co-pilot throughout this journey. The ops care offering will actually do proactive monitoring and reporting. So if the system detects an issue, it'll notify your team, and then as necessary, engage with Marantis for resolution. Or the Ops Care Plus model is a fully managed offering where we take on full operation and management and day-to-day management of your infrastructure, allowing your teams to focus elsewhere. So with that, I'll wrap up here and we'll shift over to Q&A discussion. But we're able to really, again, with Mirantis Flow, help you slash the effort of managing your infrastructure. We enable you to move much more quickly into the evolution of a cloud-native based environment. Eliminate the friction from your infrastructure, allow you to choose the platform and underlying hosting provider of your choice, and empowering you with the ability to drive forward with open source based strategy. And with that, we'll turn it over for some Q&A. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, that was a really great overview, and I especially appreciated your insights on open source, such as projects starting out as being selfish and then sort of maturing. That was it was funny, but it's a great point, and it's a nice illustration too of the importance of proximity in things like gaming, and far more importantly in surgery. Also appreciate the architectural overview on Mirantis Flow. I feel like I have a lot better understanding of how it solves the problem based on some of those slides. Before we get to live questions from the audience, type in those questions if you have them. We'll have plenty of time for your questions. But I'm excited to talk to you for a few minutes, and the reason for that is that in developing Marantis's offerings and talking to users, you guys are really sort of at the nexus of some of the most important portability challenges and cloud resource allocation decisions that organizations are facing around cloud. So I want to get your perspective on a couple of things. What are you guys seeing in terms of trends for moving to or from the public cloud?
So I think we definitely see a significant percentage of customers that have already moved into public cloud or hybrid cloud, I would even say. We actually we surveyed our Marantis customer base as well as a wider audience in the industry back last year, and there were some interesting results that came from that. I think it was, as we asked them sort of, are they using private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, and sort of the combinations. The data actually came back almost a equal split between those that were still running just in a private cloud environment, those that had gone to a single provider public cloud, those that had gone to a multi-provider hybrid cloud, and then also those running in a multi-cloud, being multiple public cloud providers, and or maybe private cloud as well. So I think we're definitely along that sort of transition where many of our customers have gone public cloud, and we're seeing now that they're starting to increasingly recognize that maybe moving to a single public cloud provider creates a different set of challenges, and are looking to sort of address that by moving either to a multi-cloud approach with multiple public cloud providers, and or take more advantage of their existing private cloud infrastructure for cloud native data center based approaches versus just their legacy virtualization environment.
Those are really interesting insights about the way people's use of the public cloud is maturing. Really interesting stuff there. Along a similar line, you hear a lot about containers, but what are we seeing in terms of virtualization versus containers? Or is virtualization kind of going away, becoming less used, in comparison to containers, or how is that progressing?
So I think the virtualization will be with us to stay for some time. I think certainly cloud native computing approaches are the trend, and I think what we will see much more going forward. There's just so many benefits that come along with that, as we've discussed many of which today. However, there are a lot of legacy applications that are in place, and these business applications, in some cases, just the ROI will not be there to transform those into a cloud native based approach, and therefore those virtualized based applications will be with us for quite some time, and therefore it's important that any solution they go forward with can be able to manage both the virtualization as well as help that legacy or help that transition away from the legacy over into cloud native. So I think we don't necessarily see a lot of from scratch greenfield new VM based deployments happening these days. I think the trends we see are the greenfield opportunities are being done cloud native. But again, there's a lot of the majority of the world is probably still on a virtualized based environment, and as customers start to make that transition to cloud native, we feel it's a key benefit that they have a platform where they can sort of engage and manage both the legacy and in the future, if you will, all from one environment.
In that container discussion, you were talking a lot about cloud native. And I'm really interested in your perspective again, from where you guys sit at Marantis. But does cloud native mean you have to move to public cloud or hybrid cloud?
No, it definitely does not mean you have to go public cloud. I mean, cloud native approaches can be done in a private data center. Fundamentally, cloud native is about decomposing your applications into a collection of microservices, sort of taking that larger application and breaking it down into little smaller mini applications that can be separated and run across different compute devices. That can certainly be done in a private cloud environment, a private data center. Maybe larger organizations that have multiple private data centers, may spread that around the space. Now, certainly there are benefits that come along with moving it into a hybrid or multi-cloud environment as well, taking advantage of the public cloud, just in the sense of the additional scale and flexibility that you have, and taking advantage of additional capacity, or not having to deploy your own data centers everywhere you need them, right? And utilize the public cloud data centers that may be closest to your customer. Another approach that kind of fits in there, maybe we didn't talk a whole lot about in the conversation, but it was that of hosted bare metal solutions, where you still sort of have, in many ways, a private cloud. You're not running with all the infrastructure from an Azure or an AWS, but you're actually running bare metal, but it's through a hosted provider that may be able to place that hosted, that bare metal service closer to where you need that compute processing. So that's sort of another slant, or another variable, I guess, to the options that are available.
So kind of like the old colo model.
Exactly.
But with sort of a new life. And that's interesting about on-premises cloud native. It sounds funny, but it makes sense the way you described it. One other thing about cloud native, how critical is the role of open source to cloud native approaches?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, I don't think cloud native and where we are with the cloud would exist today had it not been for open source, and the worldwide set of developers that have been able to help mature and move it forward. I think the old saying that the collective is better than the sum of the one. I think this is a case where many people working on different aspects of the projects, really help pull together something that's new and innovative, and continue to drive the innovation forward here. I don't have it handy. I didn't have it in the deck, but we have a slide that we use sometimes within some of our presentations that show all the different open source projects that have made up, in an example, the OpenStack offering, or even in the more Kubernetes world and some of the cloud native side. And it can be almost overwhelming, all these little pieces, all these little projects, but all those little pieces come together to make make something that's holistic and provides all the integrated services that are necessary. So, and I think if any one company tried to tackle all of that, it would never be able to, never would happen. And whether that be a company trying to build it for themselves, or even if it was a commercial entity trying to build all this and then sell it, it would just be prohibitively expensive for everyone involved. So I think it really has enabled companies to take advantage of and really leapfrog the ability to deploy these type technologies that would never have been available otherwise.
Leapfrogging is a great metaphor for what's happening with open source. Yeah. All right, super. Well, let's go off camera now and expand our audience Q&A windows here so we can see what questions are coming in from the audience.
Great.
Okay, and it looks like the first one we have here is from Jadeep, who's asking, with ransomware becoming more common, should we have all of our eggs in one basket and take good care of it, or should we have multiple cloud services, one as a backup of the other? Mike, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so I think we definitely believe there's a lot of value in a strategy that puts your eggs in multiple baskets, as to use the analogy here. Being able to take or lower your overall risk profile by placing various assets across multiple providers, and or also your potentially your own locally hosted private cloud has definitely has its advantages, from the ability, as an example, to place some of maybe more sensitive data on your private data center where you have more control over proximity, or, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, just the ability perhaps to locate certain types of data in certain regions that where they may be required. And so as an example, should one particular provider have an outage of some extended form, if you already are set up in running with multiple multi-cloud environment, it becomes a much less impactful in situation to move some of your workloads over into those other compute resources on other providers, and minimize the impact of your business as a result.
Okay, yeah, great. And here's another question. It's kind of taking another cut at some of the same issues, but from another angle. They're asking, technical resources are scarce. Sometimes we think having only one cloud service or just all on-prem may simplify our life rather than going hybrid. Should we choose different cloud providers for different services to reduce costs, such as one for storage, one for apps, one for backups, et cetera? At what point do you see that the efficiencies start to become increased overhead? How do you see that?
Yeah, is there a law of diminishing returns or something? Is there a law of
Yeah.
diminishing returns at some point? I think the answer is it's different for every environment, right? Unfortunately, there's no one answer here, and I think that's the key aspect and value that Marantis offers, is the fact that we provide that choice and that flexibility to our customers to choose the right collection of environments for their unique and particular needs. I do think there are scenarios and times where different cloud providers may have different advantages for different types of services, whether that be storage or compute. I think I used the analogy during the discussion during the session on GPU resources, right? One particular cloud provider might have a certain type of GPU resource that is necessary for some of your maybe some of your AI ML workloads, and the ability to take advantage of that. But then maybe you host some of your data, maybe some of your more static data on a different location or different provider that has cost advantages there. So I think certainly the benefit that we can bring with the Marantis offerings is that ability to sort of abstract the nuances of all those different providers, and give you kind of a single interface, single mechanism to interact and provision and deploy your applications through there. That gives you then the flexibility to pick and choose right services for your particular needs based on economics or performance or other attributes.
Okay, great. Next question here is coming from Terry, who's asking, how do you isolate the cause of the latency when there are so many factors to consider, such as internet speed, wireless technology, processor, and system resources, et cetera?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think the at the end of the day, it's the aggregation of all these different points of latency that at the system level you have to take account of. I think the part of the world that we play in and that we can have some level of impact to is is where the data center that you're doing your compute and your storage on, where that is located. So just sort of you know logically, the closer you can place that data center to your end users, the lower, at least you're lowering that component of the overall latency pie, and helping to reduce that side. We perhaps can't do much about the wireless technology or the last mile kind of connectivity side, but by creating an environment where you can locate various parts of your compute infrastructure as close as possible to your end users, we can help minimize that aspect.
Okay, great. Next question comes from Paul, and he says, how rapidly is Marantis able to deploy their CNDC AAS? Also, did I use a new abbreviation? So I'm guessing he's saying Cloud Native Data Center as a Service would be my guess on that one, which seems like a good
Yeah, I think we've
version of the SaaS acronym. But yeah, your thoughts there?
we love our acronyms in this industry, don't we? I think we've tossed that one around a bit of a time or two as well. I'm not sure it passed the marketing sniff test, but we definitely have used the data center as a service um, acronym internally. But the I think with the Mirantis Flow offering, we're able to commit to having you up and running once the infrastructure, the resources, the compute and the compute and storage resources are validated, to have initial workloads up and running within 48 hours for deployment. So we see it as a very important aspect to help you minimize sort of your time to value, essentially, to get up and going very quickly with the environment and taking advantage of the solution.
Okay, great. Another one from Jadeep, who's asking about sort of like the sweet spot with you guys in terms of customer size. So in their case, they have only one Azure cloud service, and wondering if it makes sense as a small nonprofit org with only one cloud service, or do you really need to be a big org with a lot of cloud providers to start to get the value?
Yeah, we have we have customers of really all sizes that are taking advantage of our technologies and our products, offerings, and services. Um, and certainly there's an increasing level of benefit by when you are working in a hybrid cloud environment. That said, even with just working with one particular public cloud provider, there are offerings that we have, such as our Marantis Secure Registry product is just one example that can be used very synergistically with any of the public cloud providers, and gives you the benefit of a private secure registry for your containers versus some of the public offerings that container offerings are there, that so therefore the ability to scan your images for known security vulnerabilities and other things like that. So there are there's definitely a number of attributes there that are beneficial in a single cloud, and it also places you into an environment where, while today maybe you're just using one public cloud operator, it gives you that flexibility to move when the time is right, or the need arises, um, to other cloud providers, or even deploying your own internal private cloud, or hosted a hosted bare metal scenario as well. So it certainly creates a lot of business flexibility for you, as throughout that process.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So so that's a really great explanation of the value, even from sort of the smallest sort of environment to to the largest. Um, well, we're running up on time here, Mike. But maybe this question from Ned would be a great one to end on here. Ned's asking, how does one get started with Marantis?
Definitely, I think that's a great straight man wrap up question here. So I appreciate that, Ned. I think there's multiple ways, but one of the easiest ways is to pop over to the Marantis website, www.marantis.com, and take advantage of some of our free trial opportunities there for the various products. You can download the technologies or the offerings and kind of give them a whirl on your own time there and kind of experience that from your end, and we'd be certainly more than happy for our teams to reach out to you and discuss your particular and unique requirements and situations and discuss how Marantis can help you solve some of your business challenges.
Okay, tremendous. Well, Mike, I'm gonna echo Jadeep here, who says thank you for your thorough answers. We really appreciate all the insights here in the Q&A portion, and your really informative presentation earlier. Thanks for coming on and bringing us up to speed on Marantis.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us, and I appreciate everyone joining us today as well.
Great. And with that, we do have one more piece of business before we wrap up. It's the $300 Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of today's $300 Amazon gift card is Ian Klein from Minnesota. So congratulations to Ian. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to again thank Marantis for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.